The one thing I really wanted to focus on today is YCS Raleigh. In regards to the most recent Forbidden and Limited list update, YCS Raleigh was an event that I looked forward to with a lot of hype. I was really hyped to see what kind of impact the ban list had on the format, because I was a fan and I still am a fan of the most recent ban list. However, I think YCS Raleigh shows some of the positive aspects of it and also some of the negative aspects, because it wasn't a perfect ban list. Top 32 of YCS Raleigh, over 50% of the top cut was still dominated by Snake Eyes. This is something, while to be fair, kind of expected. I don't know if people had higher hopes when it comes to the anti Snake Eyes department or whatever, like if they had higher hopes for rogue decks. I personally did expect Snake Eyes to still be the best deck. However, I think one thing that's worth pointing out is that it was still the pure Snake Eye version, and that is where my biggest disappointment comes in with the recent Forbidden and Limited list, because what I was hoping for, what I was talking about, was if the Snake Eye Fire King version is the more popular version, then I feel like that is at least more manageable and more fun to play against, even though it is still a very powerful deck, obviously. But what I really wanted to get rid of in the format was this sort of play 15, 18 hand traps in your Snake Eye deck and just like 1-card combo plus 3 hand traps every game, because that gameplay is kind of boring in my opinion. Long story short, that is exactly what ended up winning the event, which is something that I was really hoping for wouldn't happen. And that is my biggest disappointment of this tournament, essentially, is that this deck was still by far the most popular. This is the winning deck list from Cameron Neal. Shout outs to Cameron Neal, I think a deserving YCS winner after having performed very well in the game for a long time. However, it is the same old story. This is pure Snake Eye, still playing the Jet Synchron and playing 16 hand traps with triple cross out designator to just basically play hand trap wars and try to make your opponent not play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So you'd maybe wonder, why is this possible? You know, they banned Baron and Savage for this version. How did people just play the same deck again? And that is because what people are going for at the moment is they replaced Omega with Savage and Baron with this pattern. So the combo that they go for now, instead of ending on 2 Omni Negates, it ends on 2 hand rips and a Dispatter, which we've seen that performed on stream a couple times, and that is relatively disappointing. At the same time, I will point out that a lot of the times when we did see the combos on stream, they did feel more vulnerable to interruptions. It is still a worse combo than before. The reality is, getting hand looped for 2 doesn't feel great, but at the same time, they rip 2 random cards out of your hand instead of having 2 Omni Negates and to basically select which card they will negate out of your hand, right? It is a worse combo, but the deck is obviously still the best deck and it is still toxic. And this is why I wish they had done a little bit to the main deck. This does not mean that hitting Baron and Savage and Link Kariba was wrong, because I think the ban list is still going to be great in the long run. You know, we're still going to be super happy at certain points in the game when Savage and Baron are banned. I think that's still great. However, in the short term, it really feels like it changes nothing. Literally, if you showed me this breakdown, I could not tell you whether this was from this format or last format. The only thing that's new is that a bunch of these Snake Eye decks are now Cash Tira Snake Eye decks. Some of them are not even playing the Jet Synchron, which those are more pleasant to play against. So that's a small positive. So yeah, it's not all bad. And we did have a decent amount of rogue decks in top 32. Runick Plunder is one of them, which is cool. A couple of things. I tend to be more optimistic, I feel like, than the average Yu-Gi-Oh player. But a couple words of optimism. The combos that we saw on stream, even though they were still very powerful, they seemed more manageable, even from the pure Snake Eye deck. The other thing is, there were a bunch of games on Feature Match where I felt like people were trying to hand trap the opponent. The opponent was playing through it and set up like kind of mediocre boards, where I was asking myself, like, hey, why did you even decide to play that many hand traps in your deck? You could have just attempted to break the board. And I think this is because the format is still super, super young. You can make the argument that this is because this ban list happened right before the event, like I think like barely a week before the YCS happened. So a lot of people literally were like used to playing this hand trap Snake Eye deck. They had very little time to adapt, and they were like, you know, let's just bring the same deck and slightly change up the combo. Whether that's gonna to actually be the optimal way to play Snake Eye going forward remains to be seen. I personally would be inclined to do something else, but that is once again me being optimistic and all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, today on stream, we're going to be playing a board breaker approach to see if that has any viability. Another thing that I want to say, Legacy of Destruction, while overall not as impactful set, I think, still does bring some important changes to the format. Notably, Tenpai Dragon, even though I don't think Tenpai Dragon is going to be as good as people think it's going to be, if Tenpai Dragon enters the format, I think playing 18 hand traps or whatever, that is not going to be a good matchup for pure Snake Eye, because you're going to go first, you're going to do your combo, even if you hand trip 2 cards out of their hand. If you pass on combo plus, like, even if you have 4 hand traps in your hand, if they just activate 1 Tenpai field spell, you die. If Tenpai becomes a popular deck because it's also looking quite budget, if you have a friend that you can ask for a Trident Dragon, if that becomes a relevant thing in the metagame, I think people will have to adapt. The Lightsworn stuff is also interesting, and there's other stuff in Legacy of Destruction that might shake up this format. While I agree, at first glance, the results of this YCS seem rather disappointing, and to me as well. The amount of times I sat there on stream watching the stream together with Twitch chat, and it was like just hand trap wars back and forth, I was genuinely disappointed that that was how it went. But I don't know if this is how it's going to be for the entirety of the format. You know, there's still a lot of time for this format. We still have a lot of national championships happening, a lot of changes to the format potentially, a lot of experimentation to be done. This was just the first look at it. Although disappointing, I am always the one to kind of still have hope, but we'll see. The Lightsworn stuff is absolutely crazy. Maybe tier will mix up the format. I agree with you. I really like the Lightsworn cards. I don't know exactly where you will play them. I will say though, as much as I like to be optimistic about things, the Lightsworn stuff really suffers from Baron being banned. Maybe most out of all the things that are in the meta at the moment. That deck really wants Baron, but I still think that the Lightsworn cards have great potential. As someone who is synonymous with Runick, do you ever feel like performing PR for it when you see 3 Runick Stun in Top Cut? Okay, I mean, I guess we can talk about Runick Stun real quick. You guys know my opinion on this matter. You guys are gonna make fun of me again because I'm gonna White Knight for Runick again. I personally think this is just a matter of floodgates being the problem. If you think of Runick combo decks, I don't think any of those have ever been a problem. Like, the thing is, on the one hand, everyone is happy when someone like Runick plunder tops. We're gonna look at that deck profile in a second, right? The Rogue community was like super happy when I won the YCS with Bestial Runick. Everyone was like, yo, that deck is so dope, so cool. But yet everyone troll despairs when Runick Stun is on stream or tops an event. Why is that? It's because Runicks are not the problem. It's because Runick Stun is the problem. Stun in general is a concept that people hate. They are doing steps in order to prevent this by hitting more and more floodgates on the ban list, but on the most recent ban list, they haven't actually touched the relevant floodgates for Runick Stun. I'll tell you one thing. If Skill Drain is the next one back to limited, Runick Stun is gone. We've seen one game on stream where Runick Stun didn't open Skill Drain. That game was pathetic. They got completely dismantled by Branded. For both the extra deck monsters and the floodgates, the last 2 ban lists were good, but it's a work in progress. People have found replacements for some of the floodgates, and people have found replacements for some of the extra deck pieces. So what they need to do is they simply need to keep going. That's all. I really like their ban list philosophy overall recently. I'm a big fan of the ban lists that they've made. You can't really deny that this particular one was not enough, especially in the short term though. In the long term, we're gonna be super happy about Summon Limit and Anti-Spell and Baron and Savage. It's so many cards that people have been asking about for so long. The fact that they just kind of missed the mark on actually tackling Snake Eye is kind of a bummer, but that's gonna fix itself, right? The Snake Eye format is not gonna be forever, guys. If you don't enjoy Snake Eye, sure, that's not gonna be pleasant for you the next couple weeks or months, but Snake Eyes are not here forever. No meta deck ever is here forever. The Baron ban and the Summon Limit ban and all that stuff, that's gonna stick with us for a long time, because I doubt that they will revert them anytime soon. So those are changes for the health of the game in the long term that are really, really good. Eventually, Snake Eye is gonna be solved on maybe the next ban list, maybe even the ban list after that, who knows? And people will complain if it survives the next ban list, like people complained about Kashtira, for example. But those kind of problems are only temporary. But the floodgate problem and the omni-negate problem is a thing that we've been talking about for years. For years, we've been discussing these things, and they have finally tackled them. And I don't think that this ban list was bad only because they didn't touch Snake Eye hard enough. Let me know what you think of this result. Does this mean the ban list was terrible? I personally think it's going to be a good ban list in the long run. In the short term, they did too little to Snake Eye. But yeah.